they've thrown trans people under the bus. So many reactionary takes. Because he's doing a weasel. This guy's doing a weasel right now.
If LeBron James was trans,
a TYT segment about, trans student calls out transphobic Republican governor, you're kind of expecting TYT to adequately push back on this. And it's really sad that that is not what happened. So I'm just letting you know up front that that's what we're about to see. Okay, this is a trans guy. He's in high school. He's there with his dad, and he wants to talk to the Republican governor. Now, this is just after transphobic legislation has been passed. I believe that, they're going to get into it, but I believe that it involves bathrooms and locker rooms and also sports. So
your transgender model policies would require that students play on the sports teams and use the restrooms that correspond with their sex assigned at birth. Look at me. I am a transgender man. Do you really think that the girls in my high school would feel comfortable sharing a restroom with me?
That was 17-year-old high school student confronting a Republican governor.
So this is Ben Gleib, kind of a comedian on TYT, responding.
Of Virginia Gov Youngkin about his party's LGBTQ school policies at a CNN town hall. The beginning of his response was giving typical politician, but then he actually answered pretty directly. Let's take a look.
So first of all, Nico, thank you for, again, asking the question and being here tonight and engaging in this important discussion. I believe first, when parents are engaged with their children, then you can make good decisions together. And I met your dad, and I'm glad that you're both here together. That's really, really important. I also think that there are lots of students involved in this decision. And what's most important is that we try very hard to accommodate students. That's why I have said many, many times, we just need extra bathrooms in schools.
Okay, so yeah, this wasn't in the policy. The policy wasn't about extra bathrooms. This is something that he is, I guess you could call this a virtue signal. Like, he's saying that he wants it. He passed legislation that doesn't have anything to do with it. But no, it doesn't really solve the problem, right? Because the fact that you're going to pass a bill to force trans people to use a bathroom they're uncomfortable with, that in and of itself is a problem. Gender neutral bathrooms do not fix that, right? That's at best a band-aid, right? Because the real damage is to the dignity of trans people. Youngkin dodged. Yeah, and I think that he seemed evasive. He seemed uncomfortable. These Republican governors will make laws about, the Republican legislatures will make laws about trans people with this abstract idea that this is something that my voters want. Whatever transgender is, it's something my voters don't like. And I'm going to make a law to protect us from whatever transgender, or if you're, Michael Knowles, transgenderism is, right? We're gonna fight this abstract thing. And when you call it transgenderism, that's a big part of what it does. It takes people like this, whose lives you're affecting, and it turns them into an abstraction.
Neutral bathrooms.
When he actually has to talk to the person affected by his rules, he's visibly uncomfortable.
And so people can use a bathroom that they in fact are comfortable with.
There's more to his response in a moment. First, some more details about the policies his party has been pushing for. According to Virginia's Department of Education.
Yeah, they really call this model policy released in 2012 model transgender policy. The fact that they call it model makes me worried. Like, are they saying that this is like a model that other states should take up? I don't know what word model comes in here, right?
Model policies released in 2022. Students would be required to use bathrooms, locker rooms, and participate in sports leagues that correspond to their biological sex. That's according to Caitlin Lewis in Newsweek. We will come back to the sports issue in a moment because it's a complicated one. It also stipulates, however, that students who want to change their name or gender on official school records can do so only if their family submits legal documentation, and that school staff cannot refer to students by their desired name or pronoun unless their parents request the change in writing. And even so, school staff would not have to refer to a student's preferred names regardless of paperwork if they feel doing so would, quote, violate their constitutionally protected rights.
So, what do you see here from Ben Gleib? I don't get hostility. I don't get that Ben Gleib, thinks that he's doing anything transphobic, right? But that even more makes it a question in my mind whether like he's the right person to address this, because you're gonna see what he says. You're gonna see the language that he uses, which is just basically parroting back the governor's language that he used. When we looked at the email leaks that came out in Mother Jones magazine, one of the things that we noticed was that they were really adamant about not using the language like trans and cis, right? They wanted to use their language, and there's a reason for that. Language equals framing. If you can frame this issue in a certain way, like, right, you've seen this in polls, right, where you can ask the same question in two different ways and get two different results, right? Like welfare is a great example. If you ask people if they support monetary aid to people, struggling financially, they're all good. They want that. They like that. They support that. But if you say welfare, then the poll numbers go down, right? So framing is a huge issue. Framing is everything. If you want to be part of this fight, you've got to understand how framing works.
Under Virginia's previous guidelines, students are allowed to use the pronouns, bathrooms, or locker rooms that reflect their gender identity. Schools are also advised not to disclose a student's gender identity to other students.
He's misinformed, but misinformation can hurt too.
Or parents, but...
Well, just wait, it gets worse.
Below to this, Youngkin's new guidelines state that no policy guidance, training, or other written material issued may encourage or instruct teachers to conceal material information about a student from the student's parent, including information related to gender. Meaning teachers may be obligated to out.
And I want to make sure everybody got also what was in there was that there was a constitutional right basically implied in this legislation for the teacher to be able to misgender a student if they so choose, right?
Trans students.
Think about that.
To their parents. Plus, the policy also says that a parent must know if a child sees a counselor for gender-related issues. Throughout the town hall on Thursday, Youngkin said his approach to LGBT issues and other educational...
So, Joe, it's absolutely circumventing the idea that schools might be places of greater acceptance for students who, for trans students who aren't accepted at home.
Policy starts with a focus on parents and transparency. When asked about his position on the removal of certain books from school libraries, the governor said it was important to, quote, make sure parents know what's in the library and parents understand what materials are being used in the curriculum. So now let's go back to his town hall answer and hear what he has to say about transgender students in sports.
I think sports are very clear.
It's definitely violating a confidentiality that I feel like students should have. The principle that you're invoking here, Jules, is absolutely correct, right? That should be how it's handled.
And I don't think it's controversial. I don't think that biological boys should be playing sports with biological girls.
Okay, so framing. We don't say like trans girls should not be playing sports with cis girls. We say biological boys should not be playing sports with biological girls. So regardless of how you try to parse this issue, no trans person's trying to deny that like certain people have certain gametes or whatever, right? Or chromosomal makeup or anything like that. But is it pertinent here? Especially in a situation where, somebody's undergoing HRT, it's definitely, it's not pertinent in sports. That's why the Olympic Committee, a long time ago, decided that not only was it fair for trans women to compete in sports, given a certain amount of time of HRT, but it was unjust to not allow them to compete in those sports, right? And the impact on sports has been minimal, right? It's there's still a lot of obstacles in the way of trans athletes even just competing at an equal level according to their level of representation in society. Right? Not only is there no this moral panic that trans athletes are taking an inordinate amount of the dominating sports fields, but in fact you see them underrepresented in sports achievements, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we've talked about that before, but right, so this is an absolute moral panic.
Decades of efforts in order to gain opportunities for women in sports, and it's just not fair.
Okay, so we're talking, so do you see what he does there? Biological boys, right? So we're not thinking of girls, we're not thinking of women, even though we're talking about trans girls and trans women, right? And we're gonna contrast that with women in sports. So without saying so, he's denied that trans women are women. And he has contrasted and basically drawn up like a zero-sum game between trans women and cis women, right? That like trans women represent a threat to women in sports, right? And the underlying idea is that like when he says women, he's thinking real women. When he says trans women, he's thinking biological boys, right? He set up this framing in a certain way. Now, right, if you are even just a liberal, even just a progressive, not a leftist or anything, you need to push back on not just what this guy's saying, but the framing that he's using. You need to point out the framing to your audience, because there's a certain percentage of the audience that might make sense to, right? We want women's sports to be a thing. In the past they haven't gotten enough money, and in the past women don't get enough opportunities, right? We want that to be a thing. And if you let this guy get away with his weasel, because he's doing a weasel. This guy's doing a weasel right now, right? If you let this guy get away with his weasel, then a certain portion of your audience, right? Because even among liberal audience, like, right, there's a lack of understanding. I don't think there's necessarily a lack of empathy for trans people, although, yeah, no, there probably is. There probably is that too. But the major concern is a lack of understanding. And as a progressive news outlet, that's your responsibility to provide them with that understanding, to provide them with that context. Now, what happens if you select somebody that just doesn't get it, and you have them, in the lead position on this on the segment, right? We'll watch and find out.
I think that's non-controversial and something that I think is pretty well understood. Again.
Oh, is that the dad?
I think these are very difficult discussions.
Somebody's shaking their head.
And I am very, very glad to see you and your dad here together.
And this might be controversial for me to say, but I personally think that when it comes to bathrooms, gender identity should be what determines which one you use. But when it comes to sports teams, I think personally that still should be decided based on biological sex.
It's pretty unambiguous, right? There's no pushback on the framing, and there's not even any pushback on what the governor just said. He just said this is non-controversial. You've got Ben basically echoing that. Like, this is immensely harmful, right? What the governor is trying to talk about here is taking trans women out of their sports, denying us the right to participate in sports, overruling the research-based decisions of organizations like the International Olympic Committee, because a certain segment of America thinks this is non-controversial, and you get no pushback here from TYT.
I think it's beautiful and the right thing to do if we are an evolving...
I think it's beautiful and the right thing to do? What is this? What is with this Trumpian language?
Society to embrace the whole spectrum of people's...
Oh my God. Look, so the Virginia governor at the beginning was really uncomfortable, and to the point where he's just kind of repeating back cliches. It feels like PR language. It feels like stuff that's test marketed. It feels like stuff that, like somebody told him to say this. If you get this question, here's what you're gonna say so that you're not pissing off your right-wing constituency, but at the same time, you're not gonna, raise any eyebrows among people who disagree with you. So you're gonna sound you're not progressive, but you're gonna sound accepting. You're not gonna sound mean. That's the key. That's how they get away with taking away our rights. Like we're going to talk about this with Matt Walsh later. Like a lot of the Daily Wire people would prefer that Matt Walsh be more like he was in What is a Woman. You didn't see a confrontational, overbearing, mean Matt Walsh. You saw a man asking questions. And then you saw those the answers be heavily clipped in order to make it seem like nobody can answer his questions. Right? That's when this kind of propaganda works. And, you know, you're not only is TYT here letting the governor get away with that kind of weasel language. You've just got an acceptance of this. You've got an acceptance not only of the framing, but you've got an acceptance of the point.
Identity and different identities, and they should not only be respected as who they truly feel that they are, but also, of course.
Now, look, like, I don't really have a super problem with this, but what it belies is that Ben is uncomfortable talking about this stuff. Ben is walking on eggshells, right? And on one hand, I'm trying to be a little bit like, I know we went hard with the thumbnail, right? But I'm trying to be a little bit understanding. I'm trying to be a little bit forgiving. And more than anything, I would love for this situation to be addressed by TYT in a way that mitigates the damage that they've done, right? Doesn't undo it, but at least mitigates it, right? My overall acceptance is that Ben's just like the wrong guy to be doing this, or the wrong person to be doing this story, right? And that when you're covering trans people, especially in a network like TYT, which you know, has some trans people on its staff, like, right? At the very least, they need to be consulted, and probably, you know, this is a great time to bring them in and put them on, you know, put them on the show, because we don't really see enough of, you know, TYT's, you know, trans hosts anyway, right? So, but that's not what we're getting. Instead, we're getting somebody who's so uncomfortable and so maybe unknowledgeable. Yeah, like, look, I'm trying to cut him some charity here, right? I'm trying not to make assumptions that this is malice or anything like that, because I don't get malice from him. I don't get meanness. I don't get, you know, cruelty, right? I get lack of understanding. And I get unwillingness to take on this issue, right?
Of course, never ever discriminated against, but that does not mean that we support people's gender identity, that while we support people's gender identity, that their biological sex needs to cease mattering in all circumstances.
Okay, so there's circumstances that sort of thing like matters. Usually those circumstances are between you and your doctor. Maybe like later on, if you're trying to conceive, between you and your partner, right? I mean, I can think of circumstances in which it matters, but this isn't it. The assumption made here, right? When we look at the Twitter, when we look at what happened on Twitter with Ben, because some people called Ben out on this, and you know, there was a response, and it was overall defensive, right? Overall, you know, really, you know, kind of doubling down on some of this stuff, and incredulous, and feeling like, you know, I can't believe that I'm being attacked over, like, I'm on your side. You know, what are you talking about? Like, you know, you're being unreasonable. You're asking for too much.
The trans community is asking for too much.
Are trans people asking for too much? Bill Maher seems to think so, right? But I would like to think, although I compared them I compared them, right? I would like to think that TYT is a few steps more progressive than Bill Maher. I think that TYT probably thinks that, you know, like, wait, did I just turn into comment chick? Like, what the hell happened? What's going on? Nobody told me about this. What's going on here? I turned into comment chick. Wow. Well, wait, does that mean I'm no longer a random small streamer chick? We're gonna have to rebrand, chat. We're gonna have to rebrand. I'm getting not so small anymore, and people are starting to notice. I don't know, and I'm making lots of comments. So here we go.
There are simply physical differences between biological males and females, and we don't.
Do you see the level of talking down? Look, I'm on HRT, okay? I recognize that there are physiological differences, right? But also, I'm on HRT. There's not as many physiological differences as you seem to think, right? If you think that me competing at my sport, kickboxing, with cis men is appropriate, then you want to get me hurt. And I don't appreciate that. Okay? Like, I'm tough, but I'm not that tough. Yeah, like, you know, hormones have an effect, right? Which I think is what Ben's trying to say here, but also hormones have an effect, right? I don't have access to the same hormones, like I don't have, you know, endogenous, testosterone being created, right? I have a estrogen dominant system. I have for years and years and years. The idea that I would compete in MMA or in kickboxing with cis guys, that's like absurd. There are no trans people winning. Yeah, no, it sucks that we have to flex our lack of success in Olympic sports and in, you know, top level sports. But yeah, I mean, that's true too. That should tell you something, right? That's real. If we want to talk about the empirical facts of the matter, that, you know, Frog Powered Train just pointed out that they're this supposed dominance that this moral panic is based on is just not happening, right? But you see Ben just wanting to kind of like, you know, bend over backwards for the right wing here. And like, that's not the right person for, you know, to be commenting on this story. Contrary to popular belief, I am not trying to alienate allies, even allies that you know are profoundly ignorant, allies that, you know, put themselves or allow themselves to be put in situations that they just don't have the proficiency to handle, and you know, allies whose first reflex might be something that actually does us harm, right? I would like to, you know, change your mind, Ben. I don't want you, you know, canceled. God, we got back to that right-wing language really quick, didn't we? Maybe in the future, as kids get to skip the incorrect puberty things. Yo, but the thing is, they won't let that happen, right? And giving in to the right wing on like this issue, like you're gonna hear more about like kind of like his thought process on this. The idea that like giving in on this issue is moving the discussion away from the really dangerous and harmful stuff to something that is minuscule and unimportant and like, right? And so, yeah, trans athletes out there, Alana, Fallon, you know, all the trans athletes, you heard it here first. Your life's work is unimportant to this guy, right? And I'd like to think that it's just because he's lacking information here. The anti-trans sports bills seem like horrific repeats of the segregation of black people into separate sports leagues based on some really similar arguments, right? He's not familiar with the subject matter enough to mitigate the harm that's being done by the governor's statement. Exactly, Max, exactly.
Have to ignore that fact to support and respect transgender people. That said, whichever side you come down on the issue of sports, the reality is that we're also not seeing an epidemic of trans athletes like Republicans make it seem.
Just like really, really be careful in echoing their language, right? I mean, they don't like epidemic. Like there's something sick about trans athletes actually winning. Look, I mean, trans athletes should win, right? They should win as you know, in a similar proportion to their representation in the general population, right? We don't win. And a lot of that is due to the, like I said, there's obstacles in us just participating, right? When you're on a sports team and people are giving you, you know, like sus looks, you know, right? When your coach might not be behind you, when your parents might not be behind you, when you're not getting supported the way that another athlete is, yeah, you're actually at a disadvantage. You're not at an advantage, right? And all the, you know, laws as far as this goes, they you know, take into account like the time necessary for physiological changes to be enacted by HRT or yeah, and like Yosiel pointed out, you know, these are in a lot of cases youth that haven't even gotten to puberty.
And in 2021, legislators in more than 20 states introduced bills that would ban transgender girls from competing on girls' sports teams in public high schools. Yet in almost every case, and I quote, they could not cite Sponsors of these bills could not cite a single instance in their own state or region where such participation has caused problems. The Associated Press reached out to 24 state lawmakers sponsoring such measures around the country, as well as conservative groups supporting them, and found only a few times that it has been an issue. So that's my thoughts on this complicated issue. You've seen the clips. Cenk, I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah. So first, let me give Youngkin, the Republican governor of Virginia, credit on a number of things, and then I'll tell you what the trick is. Okay. So number one, he actually looked reasonable. He wasn't necessarily reasonable, as I'm going to tell you, but he looked reasonable.
I think what Cenk is trying to say is that he didn't sound mean. He didn't sound like he was coming from a place of malice. He said what he said, and he did what he did with a smile on his face. Now, I think he looked nervous, okay? I think he looked like, I think that they make these laws without any thought of the people that the laws affect, and he's face to face with somebody affected by that law. And like he's, understandably uncomfortable, maybe even, I don't know. I don't want to project feelings of guilt that I don't know if they're there or not. But he definitely was worried about coming off as mean. He was definitely, trying to kind of prevent any sort of clip from being made from his response to this guy that might be typified as bullying or mean or anything else, right? Even the governor of Utah said hey, you guys are blowing the shit out of proportion. Oh yeah, didn't the governor of Utah actually vetoed this stuff? Optics wise, he wasn't as he didn't come off optically as that, but he didn't look like, Cenk is going to say he seemed normal. I don't think there was anything normal about that exchange, right? I think that was a very awkward, stilted exchange.
He even looked human. So I was kind of taken aback when I saw this clip. I'm so used to Republicans being outward visible, Republican politicians being outward visible.
As many stories as you hear about people chanting racial slurs at sporting events, I imagine there was a similar amount of people that will yell transphobic ones. That messes with you. Yeah. So Raven's pointing out some more obstacles to trans athletes, even competing at a level that represents our how prominent we are in the overall population, right? Not only do trans athletes not dominate these sports or any sports, trans athletes don't even achieve on the level that you'd expect by how many of us there are out there, right? So, and that's one reason that, you're gonna get transphobia hurled at you especially if you're a trans athlete. This is why I never did kickboxing competitively. Literally because I saw Joe Rogan go after Fallon Fox. I saw the things that people say about Alana McLaughlin, and it scared me. Not only someone that's affected, but someone whose parents affirm and support them. That fact blows their whole argument, a hole in their argument, and how everything will be better if we don't affirm trans existence.
Monsters where they're not hiding anymore, and I was halfway expecting the guy to, that's a trans kid making a.
What's going on with TYT lately? They're having so many reactionary takes. I agree, and my assessment is that on one level, Cenk and Ana are aging, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to insult them or anything like that, but just facts of the matter. People tend to get more conservative as they get older, but more than that, some of these wedge issues that are especially prominent in big cities on the West Coast. So we got a problem with liberals, with wealthy liberals, particularly white liberals on the West Coast, but just in general too, right? We have a problem, and that is that the right wing has successfully used the issues of crime and has proposed tough on crime policies as a solution to crime, homelessness, right? Instead of looking at the houseless as victims of neoliberal capitalist policies, you've got people like Cenk blaming them right? Demonizing them, talking about like, you know, an experience where he apparently saw an unhoused person pleasuring themselves, right? And just like, you know, when somebody like him comes on his platform and in the discussion about homelessness brings that up, right? That's immensely dehumanizing. So yeah, this isn't the first time we've seen TYT be reactionary. And when I say that, right, I've gotten people that have heard me say that, right, have reacted like weirdly. Like I get a lot of weird looks from saying that. Like, you don't understand. They are progressive. They are liberal. How could you possibly call them reactionary? I don't mean that they're reactionary like no, okay? I mean that they're reactionary compared to where they used to be at, and they're veering more and more towards that way. And as somebody who grew up with the Young Turks, right, and like I said, they weren't perfect, far from it, especially on trans issues. There were always problems, specifically with Cenk. Actually, Ana was pretty good. Ana was like my hero, right? You know, whenever Cenk would have a sus take, Ana would debate him on it, and I always kind of like admired her for that. But it's hard to admire her when she's buying into tough on crime rhetoric like she is, when she's downplaying the need for you know, prison reform and for police reform or more, right? By saying that first we gotta get tough on crime to solve the crime issue or whatever, right? But yeah, I mean, like they are somewhat canaries in the coal mine as far as West Coast liberals go, if that makes sense, right? I maybe it's more than just West Coast, though, right? I mean, I've seen this on the West Coast. I don't know what the East Coast is like. I'm guessing something similar might be going on out there too.
Really great point, right? Like, really? He should be in the girls' bathroom? Right? What a great point, right? And I have 3/4 to 90% expected the Republican to respond with, oh yeah, look, the woke politics in America, we're not gonna stand for it. And I'm like, no, please be human for a second. And he was human. Oh, thank God. All right. So number two, I agree with Ben on sports, but with a huge caveat. Look, guys, is there biological differences among the genders in terms of strength and speed? Yes. Is it?
Cenk, do you have a degree in sports science? Because if you don't, you might want to rely on somebody who does, like the people that made the decision for the International Olympic Committee to allow trans women to compete in sports, right? You literally don't know what you're talking about. And so maybe you shouldn't be talking about it. Or maybe, since as Ben points out, as Ben ends up pointing out on Twitter, TYT has trans, like I know of at least one trans host that they have. TYT has trans people working for their organization. Talk to them. Listen to them, right? Rather than just like logicking it out in your brain and coming out with a take that's informed by stuff that's literally not right. The feeling that I got from Ben on Twitter was that he was unaware of the effects of HRT. You shouldn't be talking about trans people in sports then, right? You don't have the required knowledge to give a meaningful opinion on this. I think Olympic doctors and experts know better, yeah, right? But Cenk is just going for the, you know, appeal to ignorance here. And unfortunately, there's a lot of liberals that fall into the same trap.
True that all men are like faster and stronger than all women? Of course not, right? But on average, especially for the best performers, the men do perform better in sports, physical activities like that. So if you're—
And again, like the talking down to us, like we don't know that there's like, you know, intersecting, you know, bell curves as far as performance in certain sports, right?
Talking about professional sports, if LeBron James was trans, and by the way, why? It could be him, it could be anybody, right? It's just how you're born, we don't know. But let's say that he was born trans and he wanted to play in the WNBA. No, that's a joke, right? You can't have—
I feel like you are literally thinking of Bender in Futurama here, Cenk. Maybe something older. Maybe like Futurama was after his time. I don't know, but like some kind of comedian, comedy sketch, like sitcom sort of thing, where a man tries to win a women's sports competition, and that's the idea that he has of trans people participating in sports. Again, just profound ignorance, right? And that's me trying to cut him like some slack. That's me trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I mean, like this is a pretty cursed way of idea to bring in. What if LeBron was trans? Okay.
That's absurd, right? So, on the other hand,
no, what's absurd is you thinking that you are like that you can comment on this clip, right? What's absurd is you not realizing that any opinion you give on here is going to be lacking the information that to be meaningful, to be useful at all, right?
Do we really need to apply it to high schools where there's like 7 cases in the whole country? I don't know the exact number, but it's kind of in that ballpark, right? Look at the stat that Ben read you. Almost in most of the states it's proposed, they can't find a single case. So wait a minute, why are we even talking about this? Are there all these trans athletes who are...
I mean, that's the first good point he's made, right? So why are we, this is something that gets brought up not because of anything that's actually going on, but because of people's increased awareness of trans people, and with that, their awareness that trans people are allowed to participate in sports and sometimes do participate in sports, right? But again, I hate relying on our lack of success in athletics as a justification for our participation, because that implies that we can keep participating as long as we lose. This is why I didn't do kickboxing, right? This is why I was a kickboxing teacher and never a kickboxing competitor, because you're in a really bad situation. You're either gonna lose, and you want to win, you want to be competitive, you want to be successful, right? So you're either going to lose and maybe be made fun of for it, right? Or you're going to win and be villainized for it and be attacked for it and be, accused of being some kind of horrible person, some kind of, brutal, you can't win, right? And I don't want to say that, and as I say that, I don't want to take away from trans women who are participating in sports, and they are participating in sports despite what a kind of lose-lose situation that they're put in by people like Joe Rogan. So people like Fallon, people like Alana, they are much braver than I am, right? I could not take the kind of heat that they get.
When to play at the professional level or Olympics, and this is causing a giant controversy, there it's almost none, right?
Yeah, Yosiel points out the hypothetical LeBron wouldn't be the LeBron James we know. Yeah, this is a absurd hypothetical, worthy of any of the worst debate bros out there, right? It's just not useful, right? Hypotheticals are used to illustrate a point here, but when you use a hypothetical that is that absurd, it just I don't know what point you think you're illustrating.
Why are we talking about this? See, the thing is, Youngkin is smarter than guys like Trump, etc., because he can, conceal things better. But in reality, he knows it's not a problem in Virginia, and he proposed it because it's called a wedge issue in politics. A wedge issue means something where I could get you angry about a cultural issue, a demographic issue, get you to hate someone, and use that hatred to get votes.
Why are they only talking about sports? There are transgender people who are singers, painters, sculptors, etc. Yeah, and some of that's being threatened with if you take the bill in Tennessee to its logical extreme, any kind of trans person performing, right, might be subject to action by that law, right? This was an incredibly cowardly take from TYT. Yeah, and look, I get that you have different hosts, right? And maybe there's an argument that you could make that if one of the hosts has a bad take and another host pushes back on that that's something, right? That's not what we're seeing here. That's not what we're seeing, right? The one person that I can think of on TYT who, you know, might have some insight on this issue is not present. Yeah.
So Youngkin looks so reasonable, and I'm really, really glad your dad is here. But wait, are you? Because
Proud father of a transgender creative kiddo. Nice.
you're actually stripping parents of the ability to control things for their kids. You're saying, I don't want you to make.
Yeah, that's his idea of trans women in sports is LeBron playing in the WNBA. That's, yeah.
Decisions. You know, in a lot of states, they say, okay, we're going to block anything that leads to transitioning, sometimes even therapy, puberty blockers, etc. You should do with that if you're a parent who's got a trans kid. I literally don't know, right? But I kind of think that's up to you, right? Not up to me. But Youngkin thinks, no, I don't want your dad making the decision. I want to make the decision. The government needs to make the decision, but he's smiling. It looks so reasonable. He's telling you he likes that you and your dad are together. Now, he doesn't want you to have rights, and he doesn't want your dad to be able to control your childhood. He wants.
Yo, and look at this part, right? Do you see what Cenk is focusing on? He doesn't want your dad to be able to control your childhood. Does Cenk not even realize that he's on the same side as the transphobes in this issue? That trans kids deserve to have a safe space, need to have a safe space, whether their parents are accepting or not, especially if their parents are unaccepting. That was a big part of what that bill was trying to undermine, right? So listen to what he's gonna say. It's all focused on like, well, if your parents want you to be, you know, want to, you know, honor your gender identity, then you know, they should be allowed to. Well, yeah, I mean, like, and yeah, there's probably some states that are undermining that too, but that's not what this Virginia law was about for the most part. The only thing that was like kind of spoke towards overriding the will of a parent who is accepting was the idea that the teachers are given freedom of speech to misgender the students if they so choose, right?
The governor himself, the government, the tyrannical government to control your family's life over a non-issue just because he thinks I might.
Your family's life, like, look, can we get out of this framework of like, you know, like parents, like children being the property of their parents? I feel like Cenk is like reifying that here.
Be able to drum up some hatred here to get
now, granted, like, you know, I want parents to be able, parents who are, you know, trans affirmative to be able to stand up for their kids. And some of the, like I said, that's being undermined in other states, but.
Myself some more votes. So that's what this pleasant looking man on TV was doing.
I want to talk about the part where, you know, the part of the law where they're proposing that teachers and staff aren't allowed to call kids by their preferred names or their pronouns. It's like, what? We do this all the time. So if someone's name is
So yeah, this is Helen Hong, and she's probably the most like guiltless, you know, person on here. As far as like, I don't really have any objections to what she's saying.
Catherine, you know, you call them Katie.
Again, like, you know, you'd like to see some more pushback.
If they want to be called Katie or Kate, or if someone's name is
But she is like, you know, without like formally disagreeing with Cenk, she is kind of like talking about like the you know, regardless of what the parents, whether the parents are accepting or not, like, you know, if the children have a name that they would, you know, like prefer to be called, if the children, you know, want to be called by their names in school, even if they're not getting that at home, or be, you know, have the pronouns, their pronouns used for them by the teachers, right? That is one thing that the school can offer in terms of a safe space for children who don't get that acceptance at home.
Names and they want to be called Jimmy. That happens all the time. So now is the law such that you have to look down a James P. Whitworth IV, present. Like, really?
So the support for the rights of trans kids is like mediated through the parents for Cenk, right? I mean, from what he's saying, right? Cenk, if you've got more to say about this, then please say it, right? If you know, if you just didn't get to it or whatever, or, you know, you changed your mind or you thought some stuff out, like, you know, the only solution to a bad take is to revise it and to speak more and to maybe unpack some of the stuff that you didn't really talk about it. But the way that Cenk talked just there was like, yeah, for parents who are supportive, like their children deserve rights. and just like nothing, for kids that are in a situation where they're not supported by their parents, right? So yeah, and it reifies this idea of children as property, right? Which we need to get away from. You are not, the property of your parents until you're 18 years old. You're a person and you deserve rights, right?
Is that what we're doing now?
In Arizona, a bill passed committee for a vote in state legislature, which would make it illegal for someone to just be, quote unquote, a drag queen as defined by chuds. Oh, I saw this. I saw the language of this too. The language was really, what they thought a drag queen was within a quarter mile of a school playground. So this is like the drug law. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's like a drug law where, well, no, that was about penalties, right? There was like a law that, drug crimes, the penalties would increase via their proximity to a school or church or playground or something like that. But they're making it illegal for someone to be a drag queen, whatever that means to chuds, right? A business that registers itself that it won't take what? Wait, so a business that registers itself as anti-trans / anti-drag queen can establish a perimeter where no one's allowed to? Yeah, Arizona, scary place.
We can't go by nicknames. We can't go by preferred names. We can't go by preferred nothing. No. James P. Whitforth the Fourth.
But notice that they never made a law about nicknames, okay? They never established a law that says that, a student can't be called the nickname that they go by, regardless of whether this only became an issue, in relation to trans people. Arizona's like the Florida. Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Arizona's the Florida of the West.
Calling roll call is going to take half an hour.
And a couple more facts on the story here. Youngkin's administration hasn't established a clear timeline for when the model policies will take effect. In the fall, the state was still reviewing more than 71,000 comments it had received during a public feedback period. And in December, a commission of state lawmakers filed an objection to the guidelines. But some school districts in Virginia have already chosen to implement the new policies nonetheless. Virginia is far from alone in engaging in these oftentimes bigoted culture wars. So far in 2023, the Human Rights Campaign is tracking more than 400 anti-LGBTQ plus bills that have been introduced in state houses across the country. 175 of those would specifically restrict the rights of transgender people, the highest number of bills targeting transgender people in a single year to date. So, that's the reason why I think Cenk was just explaining that using it as a wedge issue is an unfair, unreasonable, and hateful thing to do. But I also do think there's room for a conversation about these things where we don't have to always, on the left, have these very immediate reactions as well, where we fall victim to that.
We fall victim to standing up for trans athletes. Yeah, we wouldn't want that to happen, right? That's a trap right there. We don't want to knee-jerk ourselves into supporting trans athletes, do we? Yeah, no, this is terrible. Ben, if you end up watching this, okay, understand a few things. I don't hate you, right? I'm interpreting this not as malice, not as hate, but as ignorance, right? There's one more thing.
Also have nuanced opinion conversation about these things where we don't have to always, on the left, have these very immediate reactions as well, where we fall victim to that. We can also have nuanced opinions on things that can make them seem unreasonable and not make us seem unreasonable. But
okay, so here's what I want you to understand, okay? As a trans person, seeing all these laws come down the pipeline in so many states is scary. It's really, really scary. Right, they're enacting legislation. And this is after we've been told by people like Loner Box that this would never happen, right? That this isn't something to worry about, that we're being histrionic, we're overstating what's happening to trans people in talking about a genocide, right? That we need to calm down, right? This is after we've been, you could understand how that would make somebody feel kind of gaslit, right? When we see people that call themselves advocates come out with takes like this that just make us feel like footballs, it feels like you're triangulating on us. That's even scarier. Right? So if you're getting pushback and you're getting anger about your take, which, like I said, I feel like it's mostly from ignorance, right? I don't feel like it's coming from a place of malice or anything like that. But please just understand that's where that's coming from, right? Because I would like to see you do the right thing by trans people here.
Show that we have some way to find middle ground.
And I agree with you, Cenk. Like, why are we talking about this? Like, this is not, this is an important issue to such a small minority. And yes, there shouldn't be discrimination based on gender. There shouldn't be discrimination based on gender identity. But like, let's talk about healthcare. or the fact that schools are falling apart, or the fact that
look, if what she's again, it's like kind of unclear what she's saying here. If what she's saying is that like Republicans, should engage in a discourse on, I mean, like, this is such a losing battle, right? This would never happen, right? If what she's saying, if who she's speaking to here is like Republicans, like, right, instead of trying to legislate against trans people, maybe enact some legislation that actually helps people out. Then that's great. But if what you're saying is like, don't engage with these Republicans, ignore issues like them banning trans women from sports, yeah, that's it's not great.
kids are dying, this is not, I don't think this issue should be more important than the fact that high school students are dying by guns on a daily basis. Like, maybe talk about this first.
True, but just a quick counter.
I mean, I get what she's saying. I don't think she's a quick counter. Oh my God, really?
That I think the fact that these things are being discussed and we can't stop the right from talking about them constantly, I do think it's then incumbent on people on the left to not let them characterize us in ways where they can say, look, they are unreasonable, they can't listen to an argument, because then it just splits things further and we're as guilty as the other side of keeping people divided.
So let me just
look, like I said, this has been an issue for Cenk in particular for a long time, right? Like I used to TYT was one of the first like political YouTube shows that I got involved with, that I watched, right? And I liked it. In a lot of ways, like TYT was kind of like the only lefty thing that was there back in the day, the only liberal platform that was on YouTube, right? So I was a fan for years and years and years, but I was always bothered by Cenk's take on trans issues, right? When a trans person would be in the news, Cenk would make fun of them. Sometimes when there was a woman that was when there was like even when like a cis woman would be shown in a way that wasn't feminine enough for Cenk's taste, Cenk would make jokes like, oh, looking a little transgendered there, like use transgendered as a pejorative, right? And that always kind of bothered me.
Both of you guys are saying. So first of all, look, it's actually relatively easy to address things like...
So it's TYT responding to the Virginia governor kind of hogging out, trying to seem normal, trying to seem like a human being in response to a trans guy that asked him a question, came with a high school student, came with his dad. The dad is supportive, and was asking, about the laws regarding bathrooms and locker rooms that Virginia is about to implement. and just basically threw a bone in terms of talking about, well, we'd like to have more gender neutral bathrooms. Maybe that would help with the bathroom issue. But then turns around to sports and says, now on the issue of sports, there's real significant differences between biological boys and biological girls, and allowing biological boys to participate in women's sports is going to really set us back on women's sports. And like, unfortunately, one of the hosts here, Ben Gleeb, just kind of ate it right up in the interest of sounding reasonable, in the interest of kind of triangulating, in the interest of wanting to like agree with one point while pushing back on another. So that's the issue. It's not complete hoggery by TYT, right? They're still it's just that in an effort to be nuanced and as he put it, and in an effort to seem like you're not unreasonable, they've thrown trans people under the bus. Yeah, Youngkin, that's who we're talking about. Youngkin, Governor Youngkin. Yeah, and unfortunately, this is like I won't say a full hog take, but I won't say full hog take by TYT, but it is a half hog take, and it's really like my issue is that, like, look, all these bills are coming down on us as trans people, right? It's a scary time to be trans. It's really scary. We're going through a lot of stuff that's traumatizing, right? We talked about Eden's Twitlonger, right? This hit us really hard. And when we see people being like, oh yeah, I'm your ally, I'm absolutely on your side, but we gotta be reasonable. You shouldn't be playing sports. You know what? I didn't play my sport because I felt like Joe Rogan was putting my life in danger if I did. I never competed in kickboxing because of assholes like that, right? Because of some of the same rhetoric, because of this idea that I'm a biological man or whatever the fuck they want to call me, right? Their whole gender essentialism, like bringing in like my chromosomes or whatever into the discussion where it really doesn't have a place, right? If you really want to talk about the sports science of it, the International Olympic Committee settled this years and years ago. They looked into this and they said, not only is it fair for trans women to compete with cis women in athletics, it's unfair to not let them. It's unfair to not let us do that, right? But this keeps on going on, and the next generation is facing this because of people like Ben Gleeb using us as a football, being more concerned about optics than he is about trans athletes, right? And you're just subjecting a whole nother generation to this same stuff. I would love to meet a kickboxer someday, that like a trans femme kickboxer that tells me that she was scared too, but she went ahead and did it, and that she's living a happy life, and that even though she gets shit from people, that she's allowed to participate, and that she feels like her friends have her back. And this is making that harder, right? I don't want anybody else to have to say I never got to participate in my sport because of transphobia, and that's literally my life here, right? So I mean, I'm sorry I'm getting teary about this, but it's real, Ben. And when you say it doesn't affect many people, and you can just we could just throw this bone to the conservatives, Ben, I'm that bone. I'm that football, okay? And I don't appreciate getting used like this, right? I believe that you're a trans ally. I believe that you care about us. I just don't think you understand the impacts of your statement. I don't think you understand how important it would be to consult somebody, on a trans person on the TYT staff before you go out and make this. Bring them on air to talk about this, right? That's who you need out there, not somebody like you who obviously I believe you're a nice person and everything, but I don't think you understand this issue. And you definitely don't understand the importance of this issue, right? So please understand, despite the thumbnail being slightly provocative, this isn't hate towards Ben Gleeb or towards anyone else. It's hope that you can be better, right? Because that's what we'd like to see more than anything else. Anyway, do liberals think that conservatives will not infringe on our rights to exist if we don't get to compete in sports? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what they, that's their calculation. This is triangulation, right? And Cenk, I know that you, at least at one time in your life, you understood the problem with the Clinton administration back in the 90s and people like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama using triangulation strategies, right? Trying to find a third way. I know that you're aware of that, right? You're a lib. I'm a leftist. I'm significantly to the left of you, right? But you've seen the problem with this third way bullshit, right? Please don't choose the third way on trans issues, okay?
And so it's incumbent on us to be a little bit more accepting too. I get it, it's making you uncomfortable, but it really shouldn't. Let me tell you why it shouldn't, right? So that's point one. Point two, to what Helen said. So why are we spending time on this when it's a right-wing attack point to distract us? Because that's the other genius of the wedge issue. Not only does it get your side to hate the others and give you their votes so you can get tacticals for the rich, right? But the other thing that it does is it forces the left, it weaponizes our decency against us. They think, you know what, Americans are not ready for trans people because it's kind of relatively new. They got used to gay people.
It weaponizes our decency against us. Cenk, if you're not talking about decency here, you're talking about solidarity, right? Acting out of solidarity. It's not a mistaken knee jerk. It's not a tactical boo-boo, right? It's how we win. It's how we build our coalition. It's like the old red umbrella slogan, nothing about us without us. It's not genius. I wish that people would stop calling it that. It's just manipulative respectability politics. We can't be too accepting or else we lose it all. And the parallel that I'm seeing, Cenk, if you want to make a parallel with the fight for marriage equality, right? Where did compromising ever get us with that issue? There were people asking gay people to chill the f out and stop asking for too much, right? This is a wedge issue. This is hurting us. We gotta stop the Iraq war. We gotta do something about wealth inequality. We got all these things we need to do. We can't worry about you getting married. I mean, you get civil union should be enough. Move to a state that allows that sort of thing and get a civil union, right? I don't think that was a good tactic then. And I don't think that it was a good tactic now, right? Even Joe Biden knew that, right? Even Joe Biden.
We used to hate them and we used to tell them to hate them. But now they're kind of used to them. They realize it's in their family. Okay, now let's get them to hate trans people because they're not as familiar with them, right? And the great thing is, it'll become the biggest issue in the country because once we attack people for no reason at all and we spread our fear and hatred, the left are too decent. They'll have to fight back. They'll have to defend them. And once they defend them,
Cenk, you really need to watch Innuendo Studios, right? This is literally something that Innuendo Studios talks about in The Cost of Doing Business. The name of that video refers to how we treat marginalized people. It refers to how you're treating trans people here. You're treating trans athletes as the cost of doing business, okay? Please stop.
They fall into our trap. Ha ha! You're making people uncomfortable. Tax cuts for the rich. Okay, that's but literally what happens. Literally what happened in the Trump.
And I don't think, he thinks that respectability politics is some kind of genius maneuver, right? It's not.
Yours. Okay,
Cenk is not my ally. Welcome to the stream, Ruby.
Last things here are, number one, look, don't believe anything that comes out of
no more malarkey, moderate white people, yeah.
a lying politician's mouth. So for example, he's like, you know what? I really think we should have more bathrooms. Really? Did you put forward a bill to finance more bathrooms in the public schools? Oh, you didn't, right? I mean, look at the insanity. Helen is so right. What's the bigger issue for your kids in schools? Is it getting ripped apart by an AR-15? So many parents are worried to send their kids to school because there's nonstop massacres in the schools. Is that an issue a little bit more important than a trans kid playing in the wrong sport in the middle of Idaho, the one case that you found? Guys, you all know it's 10,000 times more important. Yet what do they propose for that? First of all, nothing. But second of all, they say mental health.
Look, I don't want to the use of the word wrong there was just like, I don't want to overinterpret that, right? Because it's easy to pick the not best word. I'm guilty of it all the time, right? But like, I want you to notice how much you are defaulting to right-wing framing, even in playing the wrong sport, right? It's not the wrong sport, or it's not playing on the wrong team. I get that you're not, that was just a word you used in the heat of like making an argument, and you're not necessarily committed to it. But please notice that kind of stuff, right? You got to be careful about framing. This stuff is important. Language is important. Language is crucial. There was a big email leak that revealed the anti-trans legislative agenda, talked about the South Dakota bill that did not pass at first, but then in 2022 eventually passed, and how they used that as like a model for their strategy, right? They talk about language. They're very methodical in the language that they use, right? So when you play into that, right, you're talking about us playing into this, like getting tricked into reacting with human decency or something by defending like trans athletes, right? What about you getting tricked into repeating their framing, into repeating their language, and letting them frame this the way that they want to, right? That's I think a bigger tactical blunder than wanting to defend trans people.
And you say, hey, wait, do you want to fund mental health? They go, no, we were just lying. And then they say,
which is not a blunder.
The answer is more doors. So more doors and more toilets over nonsensical issues that we brought up to divide the country and drive hatred.
And again, they've pointed this out. They're not going to do more gender neutral bathrooms.
What we could do instead, and what the Democrats should do instead, is every time this issue comes up, goes, hey, good news, guys. I know you're concerned about education, right? You're concerned about the high schools, what's going on, your kids, right? I'm concerned about it. My number one concern is the teachers. They're way underpaid. They're underpaid compared to other countries, compared to where 3 decades ago, compared to other industries. So why don't we do Bernie Sanders' bill, pay every teacher in America $60,000 a year? We'll attract a much better talent that way, make sure your kids have a wonderful education. And good news, it only costs 5% of the defense budget. And the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, says that the defense budget is at least 15% too much. Pork barrel politics that goes to nothing but waste. Let's just take a third of that waste and spend it on our teachers so you have a great school system. That would be an incredibly constructive way to fight back against the war on teachers and the war on parents.
And the great benefit, Cenk, to what you said about the decency of us on the left fighting for people's rights and compassionately trying to support people, is that we actually then move the issue to a place where the debate becomes about these small number of transgender athletes in schools or in professional sports, instead of it being where they would prefer the issue to be about transgender rights in general and respect and acknowledging their humanity.
So again, throwing them the bone, the cost of doing business, that's us. That's me you're talking about, right? And not even me, because like, I mean, I miss my chance. I'm not gonna get to compete in the sport that I love, right? What about the next generation? Are you sure you wanna give up on them so easily? Are you sure you wanna just negotiate their rights to participate in the sports that they love away so easily?
We've already won that. We've already helped move that issue towards a place of compassion, and now it's about the details, and that's a big win, I think.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is...
Oh my God. Okay, so like, speaking of appreciation, let's appreciate the Twitter exchange that went on between Ben Gleeb and some trans people, including our own Zara Xerox. Okay, so maybe TYT should have trans voices, advocates, and medical professionals on to talk about trans issues. Having two cis men like Cenk Uygur and Ben Gleeb agree with the lie that trans people would have advantages in sports is pretty disgusting. Yeah, Polly actually responded to this too. So yeah, they also use the term biological males. Accepting their framing is a mistake. Is a mistake, right? Okay, so here's Nicotine in the thread. Absolutely wild that TYT is on this train. I expect this kind of stuff from Fox and Friends, but it always hurts when it hurts seeing it from allies. You know, that allies is in quotes there. It just takes the most modest amount of research, guys. Come on. So Ben Gleeb says, I love transgender people. For the record, oh my God, channeling Jesse Lee Peterson too. For the record, saying you disagree with you're saying you disagree with biological facts? This is so undeniably pedantic. You do not believe biological males are on average stronger and faster than biological females. Yeah, there we go. We're just gonna adopt their language. That's not gonna hurt the argument at all, right? Just adopt their language, adopt their framing. What does ignoring the facts do for this cause? An honest question. This sounds like a hog response, right? And like I said, I'm like trying to give the benefit of the doubt and saying that this isn't coming from a place of contempt, but it's coming from a place of ignorance, right? This isn't hatred for trans people. This is just a severe lack of understanding. And, you know, it definitely belies that Ben's not the person to talk about this issue, right? And especially given what we're going to see in just a second. Wait, he said we already won. Well, let's back it up.
Said about the decency of us on the left fighting for people's rights and compassionately trying to support people is that we actually then move the issue to a place where the debate becomes about these small number of transgender athletes in schools or in professional sports, instead of it being where they would prefer the issue to be about transgender rights in general and respect and acknowledging their humanity. We've already won that. We've already helped move that issue towards a place of compassion, and now it's about.
So he's under the impression that we've already won the issue of trans rights and trans dignity, and that what he's achieving by offering up trans women in sports as a sacrifice is preventing that argument from being opened back up. We're gonna get to what Ben says here. Okay, for the record, I have transgender friends, oh my God, and did you march in 3 pride parades too? Who agree with my position on this. Are you claiming that your position is the only one that should be respected? So wait, you wanna use like the fact that some trans people have a conservative view on this issue? You're trying to use the existence of trans people with more conservative viewpoints on this issue as a way to shut us down. Meanwhile, claiming that we're trying to shut them down, right? We can't shut them down because there's always going to be cis people like you that will prop those voices up, and they don't constitute anything close to a majority of the trans community, and yet you'd feel like they're almost on parity with us because you've got cis people that they're extremely useful to propping their viewpoints up, right? Are you claiming that your position is the only one that should be respected? Is that not exclusionary? Are we excluding pick-me's? Oh my God, I'm sorry. God, I'm trying not to use that language, right? I'm trying to be as like charitable as I possibly can here. To some of your trans brothers and sisters, I ask these with nothing but true curiosity. So here we go. TYT has trans hosts. How does that feel to get invoked as a fig leaf? If you have trans friends and maybe some of them are hosts on TYT, like think about what you're doing to them by using them as a shield. I don't think they appreciate that. I know I wouldn't appreciate that. You have, other networks that do that? Yeah, we're the best you can hope for, trans people. If you're saying a cis person can never comment or have an opinion on this, this sounds like a Vosh. This sounds like a Vosh take. Are you saying that a cis person can't possibly have an opinion on this? Listen, No, if you don't listen, especially if you have people that work at your network that you could talk to about this. Like the problem is not that you have an opinion. The problem it's an opinion born out of ignorance, right? And we're gonna see more of that as this thread goes on, right? If you use insults, you don't come off as serious. Oh my God, I'm trying to do my best not to use insults, okay? I am being very charitable, very nice here, very, purposefully trying to tamp down my rhetoric in hopes that maybe I'll reach somebody with this, right? In hopes that I can change your mind and therefore, get you to correct the record. How is it transphobic if there's no other way to refer there's no other way to refer to someone born male? Oh my God. Okay, well, yeah, you've absolutely swallowed their framing. Hook, line, and sinker. Somebody else comes in here and says TYT has trans hosts is the capitalist version of I have trans friends. Well, we got trans friends right up here. I don't know if they even saw that, but yeah, like Ben Gleeb also says that. Oh my God. So yeah, this thread, as you can imagine, some people had some things to say about Ben's takes here. So yeah, Stellar Vision, to be clear, I have been a longtime fan of TYT, but as a trans person, the language y'all were using, the language that they were adopting, right? And that's the what do you call it? Like the path of least resistance. To go ahead and adopt the language that you're hearing from the person that you're reacting to, but it's a mistake. They choose that language on purpose. That language is strategically used, right? They have, honed that language in order to reframe the issue. Please don't let them do that. You gotta push back on the language, right? I mean, I think people are starting to realize how harmful terms like transgenderism can be. I've been saying this for years and years and years. And yes, I know that there's well-meaning people that will use that terminology, not trying to be transphobic, not fighting on us on the issues, but I still think it's a mistake. I think it's something that we have to be cognizant of. This reaction that a trans person saying, wait, maybe you should have a person who is educated on trans issues speak about trans issues. It's just not it, Sweaty. Oh my God, that's what the insult was. Yo, this is the insult. Sweaty. That's not an insult. That's a ContraPoints reference. I think Stellar Vision is being incredibly nice here, and to characterize her any other way is wrong. Okay, so you didn't say that politely as you did here. Oh my God. Called our respectfully phrased words disgusting. Ben, they're not your words. They're transphobes' words. That's the problem. And again, I'm being really charitable with you here. I don't think you did it on purpose, but you can still do harm without meaning to. And you've illustrated that point. You were literally an object lesson for that here, right? Didn't answer, and I'm not trying to be offensive, and I'm not trying to be insulting, or I don't think I am, right? I get that this is uncomfortable for you, and I also get that you don't understand what you did wrong, but you don't need to be this defensive. Didn't answer what phrase is better. Yeah, this is absolutely some debate bro shit right here. Just debate broing Stellar Vision. Didn't ask what phrase is better when trying to say biological man. Oh my God. Instead of educating us kindly, you said you're at war with us and just called me sweaty for no reason. Listen, that was the nicest thing she could have said in that circumstance. God damn, is that the discourse you prefer? Huh? This is a Twitter thread. I am 100% serious with everything I say. Calling trans women biological males is never respectful. If you're talking about trans women, say trans women. Calling someone sweaty instead of sweetie is something queer folk do when throwing shade. It is mild shade too. It's mild shade. Why would you throw shade when I'm genuinely trying to? This feels like talking to Will. This feels like talking to Will, right? When I'm genuinely trying to understand and am open to conversation seems counterproductive. I'm asking, how do you prefer one to refer to the concept of the sex as it's assigned at birth. Listen, how about you keep that concept to where it actually applies? And since I don't see like a MD or a PhD after your name, and I'm not consulting you as a medical professional, it's really not. It doesn't apply here. It's not. The term trans woman does not cover the reference needed to. You want to fucking put a little marker on me to just remind everybody of my birth sex. Even yeah. So here comes Polly. Yes, it does. In fact, biological male has no actual meaning and is confusing unless you make transphobic. Yeah, it's confusing and it's useful. You have swallowed their framing of this issue and are just repeating it back. TYT has never been with marginalized people. Ana doubled down on her use of the N-word. I did not know that Ana was an N-word Andrea. Basically said sorry, not sorry, and said that not saying the N-word when describing a story is watering down the story. I didn't even know about that, right? I've seen some bad shit, but I wasn't aware. Wow. If Ben knows trans people that work at TYT, he clearly doesn't listen. That's what it would have taken. That in fact, consult people. Like if you have coworkers that you might want to consult them before doing this issue, or even just bring them on stream. I think this would have been if they're I don't see enough of TYT's trans hosts, right? And this would have been a great issue to bring a trans person on to talk about, right? Or let them drive the reaction even, right? That's the best practice, right? It's just somebody in YouTube chat earlier said nothing about us without us, right? That's a phrase for a reason. It's just used to make people look not so bad. Problem is, cis men want to be in charge of the big topics. Yes, Jules, you got it. You're on that, right? Problem is cis men, people, privileged people in general, like want to control the quote unquote big topics. So when a topic like trans rights moves into the forefront, they have a certain level of entitlement. A great level of entitlement, a prodigious level of entitlement even. So they won't turn over the issue to a trans person. Yep, that's right. They're so used to being in charge. Ben is a true intersectionalist as well. We're talking about Ben Carollo here, not Ben Carollo is one of TYT's trans hosts. She stands up for trans rights and for the rights of other marginalized people. She punches above her weight class. Poor Ben G. Why can't they just be nice to him, making it so hard to learn? Why would you throw shade? I know, right? If it weren't for brave journalists such as Cenk Uygur, I would have no idea that it's legal to warble your weasel in public. Oh my god, we got weasels in chat. Can we get some weasels? Yo, you all have weasels now, right? YouTube chat, if you're a member, you've got weasels. Twitch chat, you got weasels. Even if you're not a member, you can unlock those weasels using channel points. So, right, you got no excuse for not posting weasels all over the place. Right, that's right, Zara. Meow. My charity is diminishing with each post I see from Benji here. It is definitely hard to have charity, or and like you shouldn't be expected to. The I have a blank friend defense is the number one excuse for horrible people to say things about a disenfranchised group of people. I mean, like, I don't know about it's a wash. Like, right, what does that mean? It's a wash, like, it could go either way, but like, I mean, yeah, like they're pointing out that that estrogen and T blockers eliminate a lot of the advantages. That is the conclusion the International Olympic Committee came to, right? So yeah, this thread got kind of messy, right? This got messy. What happens if I click on this one? So here's Stellar Vision saying, here's some educational material that may help you understand what I'm talking about. And you're basically using the, oh, I have a friend who is trans argument. Please allow trans people to speak about this, and please listen to medical professionals too, or even sports, even the International Olympic Committee's, sports, like they did this consulting sports science people, right? So this is the ACLU, not exactly the perfect track record on things, but the ACLU is supporting trans athletes here. I do allow trans people to speak about it, of course, which is part of how I came to this opinion. Oh my God, would you prefer it if I don't publicly mention that I have trans friends? Just don't use it as an excuse, like, right? That doesn't make it better, that makes it worse. What's up, Dragonflytess420? Good to see you. Whoa, what is that emote? Oh, is that a cryptid mage emote? Nice. Damn it, did Gleeb do a transphobia? Just a bit. It sucks because I kind of liked him. Yeah, so if you don't know Ben Gleeb, he's best known for, I guess he had a debate with Charlie Kirk where he brings out a picture of a dolphin. Is it like a dolphin embryo or a dolphin fetus? And he's like, basically, are you gonna call this a human being? And Charlie Kirk says, yes, of course it's a human being. And it's like, that's funny because it's actually a dolphin embryo. Oh, right. That's what he's best known for. I would prefer you not use trans people as a shield. Trans people generally prefer you not use them as a shield either. When you were criticized for transphobic language, again, read the article. There is no significant difference between trans athletes and cis athletes. Listen to the science. Like there's so much. Yeah, there's more than just the ACLU. We're talking about the International Olympic Committee. We're talking about anybody who actually engages with the research has come to this opinion. That's why trans people are playing or were playing in sports. In some places we're not allowed to anymore, right? But like that's why the consensus was to allow us to participate in sports, right? Not claiming that your opinion is the only one that is correct, that our opinion is the only one that's correct. Well, I mean, you'd be correct in claiming that one, but ours is the one that studies are backing up. Olympics have been allowing trans people to participate for over a decade. It's like more like 2 decades, isn't it? Yeah. They fit within, as long as they fit within hormonal levels standards for competing. This is not new. Redacted in here with, I bet Ben has a black friend too. So yeah, some friends of the show. Look, there's no comment check with a quote tweet. I can't believe that for hours this dude has been debate bozoing trans people, correcting them about this massive transphobic take. The f***ing audacity. I wonder if Ben would defend using the N-word because a lot of trans people are upset at this, and it's understandable. Like I hope that maybe TYT could have a little conference. You have trans hosts, maybe consult them about this, right? I think that would really help. No worries. I just can't. I gotta be like careful what I say on stream because YouTube is very strict. And sometimes Twitch is strict too about certain things. Science is pretty clear. There's a reason they're letting trans women play in these leagues. Yeah, like right. If you go by the sports science, it's a slam dunk. Ha ha ha! I used a sports term. We should have known back when he was doing the dolphin apology. Okay, let me catch up with YouTube chat here too. I wish that it was Jay and Silent Jink and Silent Ben G at this point. Yeah. I didn't expect more from the dolphin fetus guy, right? It's not hard to type. I am sorry. I didn't mean harm and I will do better. Yeah. And I think there might have been like, there's an apology somewhere in here, isn't there? Isn't there? I think there might have been some kind of apology somewhere here. I was told there was. Yo, Ben's talking about anecdotes here and then he posts like one study. Right? One study where what you need is like you need a higher level of evidence here, right? And that's what the Olympic Committee consulted instead of just one study that's like going to be like about like, bone density, hypothetically, theoretically, right? Like especially if you're not a scientifically minded person, especially if you're not skilled, if you're not like you're not trained in sports science. It's my Patreon. I would like to thank all of my Patreons. Ooh, they are objectively better people than either you or I. unless they are you, in which case, ooh. They get to view the videos before you, so they've already seen this and hit like and left a comment and joined and became a member and all sorts of other cool stuff. They hit the bell for notifications. If you'd like to join them in the land of tomorrow, watching videos early and all, you can sign up for my Patreon too. The link is in the description, ooh.